There's a problem within the privacy community. The refusal to call out a creator whose motives have become questionable or outright hypocritical to their platform. A creator that claims neutral reporting but has steadily incorporated more hot takes. A creator that promotes discussion while censoring their own comment sections or outright ignoring them on other platforms. The same creator that complains about toxic community members while simultaneously antagonizing commenters with snarky or condescending remarks. The creator in question is none other than Henry from Techlore and Surveillance Report.
We don't want to inject how we feel about each service and swing people towards our personal preferences.
On the topic of swaying viewers to certain services, there's this constant promotion of very specific products and services over other alternatives that are just as good, if not better. In fact, some of these alternatives are even mocked, while Henry's preferences are praised, despite the alternatives offering the same features.
If you meet some new person on the street, you're either asking them for a social media handle or you're asking them for a phone number. You don't ask for their email. And you don't ask them for their session ID. So everything right now is based on the phone number, and I think Signal's going to stay that way.
The Signal Messenger app, for example, is arguably the biggest offender, constantly being suggested to the audience, while alternatives such as Session and Briar fall by the wayside.
I don't think it's any issue to call these services out and be like, hey guys, no, it doesn't matter if you're right or left, you can still use Signal to communicate with people. I think that's mostly what we're criticizing here, is that a lot of these alternative platforms just aren't built by people who are very technical for whatever reason.
I have a friend who works in law enforcement, and when I first downloaded Signal years ago, he popped up in my contacts as like, oh, here's people you know with Signal. And I texted him and I was like, oh, hey, I didn't know you had Signal. And he literally goes, yeah, we have to have it for work. And then 3 years later, William Barr becomes head of the FBI and he says end-to-end encryption is bad. Just the astounding hypocrisy of it.
It applies to everything. People are like, Signal's compromised because they require a phone number. And it's like, let's just ignore literally every freaking legal request that's been sent to Signal that only came back with the information Signal promised to give them. All right.
But think of the children. We need to ban encryption because the children aren't safe. Even though, remember the one time there was a data breach that exposed student addresses? That actually happened multiple times. But yes, Signal and WhatsApp are the problem. Okay, off my soapbox.
When people spout BS, like Signal is compromised, you're effectively saying that math isn't real. At the end of the day, at least the encryption side of Signal, right? You can go ahead, but even, you know what, even the phone number is hashed. So technically speaking, Signal doesn't quite know everyone's phone numbers, but people also dismiss that. Trying to get factual with people who believe these things is very difficult. macOS Ventura developers can now use a new single API to launch their app, launch agent or daemon at login. These apps will be allowed to launch at login by default and you will be notified. Probably the best demonstration of this is, let's say you download Signal and Signal now opens when you log in. You will now get notified that Signal added itself as a login process. So this is just a little bit of an extension of that. And also I think it speaks to how awesome permission management is on macOS. So I wish that Linux and Windows caught up with Apple in this regard. Up next,
we have a few ways around that. That's one reason we're a big fan of open source, is because open source, you can see what the app is doing. We're also big fans of a history of legal requests. For example, we've talked about all the time that Signal has been served multiple legal requests, and every time they do, they have almost nothing to turn over. So these are the kind of things that help build trust. It's not with something like Signal, where if somebody's like, man, I want to have a sensitive conversation with somebody, what should I download? And I'm just like, Signal, full stop, end of conversation.
That's something that I tell pretty much everyone I meet who asks me, oh, what do I do about privacy? I tell them, freeze your credit, switch from Chrome to Brave, download Signal. And it's just going to be a messier protocol than something like Signal, which is a lot more proven.
If security was my priority and I was in a Edward Snowden type situation where I need maximum I can sleep safely at night security, I would definitely go with Signal would be my first choice. But yeah, Matrix would not be my first. They'd probably be somewhere on the list, but they certainly wouldn't be my first choice.
Commenters have pointed out and criticized this behavior, dubbing Henry and Nathan from Surveillance Report as both Signal fanboys. And of course, this is always met with denial, followed by a condescending rant.
Exactly, and that's the confirmation bias I was talking about earlier. If you're someone who believes that Signal's compromised and we're not, on the same boat as you now think that we're somehow super pro Signal and are unable to criticize it. And if you're someone who's super pro Signal and we even bother to criticize it a little bit, you're gonna think that we're super against Signal. And because we know this happens because some of you, we see the same comment regarding the same story and people interpreted it literally the exact opposite way. You should look into confirmation bias if you don't know what that is and you listen to our podcast. It'll probably make you a lot less angry about the stories we cover down the road.
Hell, given the defensiveness of Henry every time Signal is criticized, it's no surprise that people sometimes accuse surveillance report of being shills for Signal altogether.
And also, and here we go, people are going to be like, Signal fanboys, because people think we're Signal fanboys, and it's like, no, it's because it's proven.
Privacy.com is also another questionable service that is recommended often. As of December 2021, users are required to submit information such as a social security number in order to use the service. This is something Henry has failed to disclose to his viewers whenever the service is mentioned, even though it is an important detail that would likely sway some people away from the service altogether. There is nothing stopping Henry from including caveats when recommending these projects and services, yet he continues to omit them. Given that his Going Cognito series tells people not to casually hand out personal information and question whether they even need the service in the first place, it's surprising that Privacy.com is still being recommended.